What are you expecting from the Sixers this year, Logan?
So I don't have these teams separated by a ton record-wise. I have the Philadelphia 76ers winning 50 games. I have the Knicks winning 52. So it's very, very slim margins. The biggest difference to me and why I'm a little bit more confident in the Knicks being better in the regular season and the playoffs is the continuity aspect and the fact that, we've just seen it before. There's a lot of moving parts here in Philadelphia, right? They bring in Eric Gordon, they bring in Paul George, they bring in Caleb Martin, they bring in KJ Martin, they bring in Andre Drummond, Reggie Jackson. There's just a lot of new toys here in Philadelphia, and so I just wonder if it's going to take a little bit for them to gel together. What I want to start with, we already know who three of the starters are going to be: Maxey, PG, Embiid. Carson, who do you think flanks the other two? Because I think there are some different lineup combinations that you could go with. Who do you starts at the 2 and the 4 for this team?
I think it's Oubre and Caleb Martin. I think PG is actually probably effectively your 4. I just think you have the dynamic between Caleb and Eric Gordon. I think there's no question that Oubre is going to start. I mean, just with what he brings defensively and athletically. If he shoots better than last year, that's just a really good basketball player. And the shot's a big question, so maybe he won't. But I just think he's earned a starting spot. Gordon versus Martin. Eric Gordon is the more dynamic offensive talent, right? I mean, the shooting ability, the range. He's still a bulldog as a driver. I just think that Caleb is probably sort of a more seamless fit as a low-usage player. You still attack closeouts, decent shooter, not the same offensive player, but then defensively he's just going to be an absolute hound, crazy high-effort player. I'd probably rather have him, and you get a little bit more size, you get a little bit more rebounding with him. I think that gives you a very switchable, versatile defensive wing grouping of 2 through 4 where those guys are kind of interchangeable positionally.
I agree with that assessment, and I also think Eric Gordon can just be a little bit more frustrating in terms of how he overimposes himself on
Absolutely.
the game. I think you saw that last year in Phoenix where, and it's not every game, but there's just spots like late in games where it's possession.
He likes to pull from 30 feet.
He likes to bring the ball up the floor, and it would just be a bad turnover. And it's like, bro, you have Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, and Devin Booker on your team. Like, get the ball out. You're Eric Gordon. Like, I'm not trying to be mean, bro, but you're Eric Gordon, man. Get the ball out of your hands. So I just think it's better for him if he's off the bench, commanding the bench unit a little bit. And that's where he can, I think, thrive in a role like that, where he doesn't have to worry about doing too much. Another final reason before I get into my X factors for Philadelphia, another reason why I also prefer the Knicks, I like their bench a little bit more too. I just think they have more quality bench players in Philadelphia, and that matters to me. The biggest X factor, and we all know this, it's all about how healthy and available Joel Embiid can be come playoff time and how he performs. Now, I thought this last playoff run, 2024, the most encouraging playoff showing of his career. He gives you 50 points at basically 70% dealing with Bell's palsy. Like, could have been less than that. He was just so clearly far away from at his best. I thought he dealt with double teams better. I thought he was more efficient. Like, I just thought it was a cleaner playoff run from him. But I still do have my concerns. I do think this is the best team Embiid has ever had around him. But, I'm worried about him stagnating this offense in the way that Embiid does. Guys not moving off ball. Embiid just sitting there at the elbow, pulling a jumper. I don't think it's the most conducive to winning offense. I worry about his conditioning come playoff time. Again, I think that's included with his health. But if he can just be out there and be 80 to 100%, which at this point, Carson, I think it's harder for me to expect Embiid to be fully healthy and available at this point. He just hasn't done it. Yeah. And so for me to expect this year to be different, I think is insanity. Like, it just is. Like, Embiid has shown us who he is time and time again. So for me to expect this to be a different year is rose-tinted glasses. But I'm hopeful. I hope that this can be the year. And if that means Embiid exerting himself less in the regular season and playing less, I think that's what the Sixers have to do. Playing Drummond more. And I think that's a luxury that Embiid hasn't had. Having a backup center that can actually play real minutes. Drummond's not some superstar at this point in his career, but he can give you a solid 20 a night and rebound the ball. The other component to me and swing factor here for the 76ers is if Tyrese Maxey continues to ascend. Now, I happen to think that he's close to his full potential. or reaching there. I mean, I thought last year was really impressive considering that Embiid is out for a big stretch of the regular season, and Maxey really had to run the show. Now, I think you see some of his limitations as a number one guy in that sense, but I think it was helpful for him, right? You're just going to naturally improve having to do more, and I think it did. 25 points per game, 6 assists per game, 57% true shooting. The kid's blinding quick. He's got phenomenal change in pace. He's an elite shooter, and he's a flamethrower. I mean, this playoff run, especially as a number two, like, I really trust Maxey as a number two scorer, especially when you have such complementary players around him in Embiid, an awesome pick-and-roll partner, and now Paul George as a tertiary guy. I really like the situation for him. And I think Maxey is going to thrive as the number two guy. And I think he's improved as a playmaker. My favorite thing about him, though, is probably just his efficiency. Maxey doesn't turn the ball over. He makes good decisions. He makes smart passes. He's so freakishly efficient. I know I'm getting that every single game with Maxey. And then you introduce Paul George. I think this is a better situation for him, too. We talked about this a lot last season, Carson, but him being tasked with being the number two guy, and then in the playoff run having to step up and be, almost a number one guy, you're just asking PG to do too much. And him being the de facto number three here is really good. Play high defense, knock down a high percentage of your catch and shoot looks. He was near 40% off the catch last season. He's going to thrive in that role. And then pick his spots in certain spots when you need to step up as a ball handler or as a playmaker and take on possessions. It's just a luxury Philadelphia hasn't had. I think this is the best roster that Joel Embiid has ever had here in Philadelphia. I think that they're set to contend in a way that they haven't in previous years. And again, I think some of the Sixers' playoff shortcomings definitely falls on Embiid's shoulders. But I think this is the best team he's ever had around him, and that's why I'm encouraged that this could be a different year. All three of the best teams, in my opinion, are in the Atlantic Division to compete for the title. Or out of the East, excuse me. It's Boston, it's New York, and then it's Philadelphia. And the margins between New York and Philadelphia are really close to me. So I expect the team representing the East to come out of this division. And Philadelphia is on that short list of real deal contenders in the Eastern Conference to me. The reason that I have the Knicks and Celtics higher than them, and the reason that I'm more confident, is I believe in their depth, I believe in their top-end talent, and I'm just skeptical about Joel Embiid's propositions as being healthy and being the player he needs to be in the playoffs.
I do think that this is one of the best versions of the Sixers that we've seen under Embiid. I would say the second best. I think that the 2019 team, when you have Jimmy playing at that level, you have Ben Simmons as good as he ever was, JJ, one of the best spot-up shooters in basketball, Tobias Harris. That was a really, really strong starting five in a team that obviously lost at the very last moment to the eventual champs in Toronto. But I'm super high on a lot of aspects of this team. I love the Paul George fit. I think that he is still an awesome player. I think he is an awesome fit. In several ways, he had a career best season. Last year, his efficiency was the best it's ever been. He's an elite spot-up shooter, and you mentioned, Logan, that he can pick his spots more as a creator because he is your third option now in terms of volume, but he was a 90th percentile efficiency and an 80th percentile efficiency isolation creator last year. 90th percentile pick and roll, 80th percentile isolation. So as an on-ball creator, he still has juice, and he's super versatile on both sides of the ball. I think that he is just the ideal third star. I think he's an awesome fit here. I think he complements their star duo that was already in place very nicely. And Maxey was outstanding in the playoffs, dude. I mean, he basically gives you 30 a night on 60% true shooting. The key for him is going to be his consistency as a pull-up shooter this season, because his growth as a shooter overall since he was a prospect has been really, really impressive from beyond the arc. But last year, out of the 25 guys to attempt the most pull-up jumpers, he was tied with Ant for being last in pull-up efficiency. He's a better shooter than that. We've seen it, but that was the reality of his efficiency last year. So if that pull-up jumper is more consistently dialed, when he pairs that with his speed, his ability to attack the paint, and he has Joel Embiid alongside him, because that's another reason that Maxey's efficiency went down last year. He was just far less efficient without Embiid on the floor. And Maxey is damn near unguardable. Dude, he's not just great out of pick and roll. I mean, he's got a beautiful floater game as well, and you mentioned the change in pace, but In transition, he's phenomenal with that full court speed. Spotting up, he's a ridiculous catch and shoot guy. Like, he's just such a good fit with other stars. He has such a blend of that on-ball and off-ball value. And I do think he'll be more efficient this year because Embiid should be healthier. And I think he'll only continue to improve. Like, as I said, he can have a better pull-up shooting season. He can keep getting better as a playmaker. He's never going to be elite there, but you already see the leap that he took last year just by the nature of having the ball in his hands so much more. Like, I don't know why he wouldn't marginally improve again this year. He's still young. He's still growing in terms of taking on those responsibilities, and he could reach that like legit all NBA level this season. So those are pretty amazing dudes to be your second and third options. And then Embiid is just obviously an utterly dominant regular season force. He was having one of the best regular seasons we've seen before he got hurt last year. Over the last 4 years, Philly plays at a 58-win pace when he's on the floor, and I do think he's the best that he's ever been. You can talk about some of the same issues that came up in the playoffs, but his jumper held up better. His playmaking was better than it's been. For him, everything is ultimately going to be about the postseason, but I think I can say that this is the best version of Embiid that we've seen. So this should absolutely be the best big three in basketball. And that is the top end talent that makes this team very, very intriguing. Because outside of that, the rest of this roster is largely new. And, you know, some of these guys, they had to kind of pick up on real value adds, find them off the scrap heap a little bit. I don't mind Martin and Oubre starting on the wings. They are both questionable shooters, but they're long, they're athletic, they're versatile defensively. You do have the lack of a true four here in Philly. That's not a huge concern to me, though. I think that PG can check most power forwards, and I think if they have enough rebounding in the aggregate from the 2 through 4 spots with Oubre and Martin and PG to hold up there, you know, it's a little bit of a thing against like a real big, powerful four. Julius Randle, honestly, being an interesting example, but I think that PG would do fine in that matchup. And I like a couple of their guys off the bench. Drummond is a good backup center. Obviously wildly overrated at his prime, but as a backup center, I like him. Gordon still brings that shooting and driving ability. Jared McCain's shooting, I think, should make him playable. I don't think that he'll take Lowry's minutes initially just because Lowry still shoots the ball at a really high level and he just has such competitive instincts and such a high IQ. Like, you don't want him starting, but I think as just a 15-minute-a-game guy off the bench, you know, he just has a veteran sense for the game that McCain can't have yet. So there's a lot that I do like with this Philly team. The bench is not comparable to New York's. The talent around their big three is not comparable to New York's. But that big three is ridiculous, and I do like how they built out this roster considering what was available to them. I have them winning 52 games because I expect Embiid to miss 20 to 30 games. PG was very healthy last year, but just based on the recent track record, he'll probably miss 20 or so games. So I think that the Knicks will be healthier, and even if they do sustain an injury outside of Robinson or obviously like Brunson, like they just have so many quality players that they should be able to hold up pretty okay. But this Philly team has the potential to be dominant, man. And when you do compare them to New York, they have easily 3 of the top 4 dudes in that series. Like, no question there is a tier gap between PG, Maxey, and Randall and OG. I do think that their team fit is very clean. I think it's very intuitive. They added a great third star. They added this sort of personnel around their 2 offensive fulcrums where all those dudes just fit in away from the ball. And they're athletic. And yes, I wish that Oubre and Martin were a little bit more consistent as shooters, but they're the right sort of player. I also trust their stars more. Embiid, of course, has his issues, and I do not trust his health whatsoever. And he has regressed in the playoffs every year of his career. So I'm not bailing him out. What I'm saying is it's not comparable to Randall, who has literally melted, crumbled, been an awful basketball player. Embiid is still so valuable defensively. He still demands so much offensive attention. He's just in a completely different stratosphere as a player. And he has the potential to just run over the entire league in a playoff run. And I trust Maxey. I know some people don't trust PG as a third option. Absolutely, I trust him. He's not going to be expected to score 25 points per game. He's a damn good third option. So when I think about what an NBA champion looks like, it's actually a bit easier for me to see it with Philly right now than it is with New York. And the reason for that is that they just have the sort of overwhelming talent at the top with the right combination of skill sets, where you think about if things go right, like who has the ceiling to just look multiple powerhouses in the eyes in a row and outclass them? I think it's Philly by a tad. I think it is the team with the best player, the dude who has the potential to just go complete supernova, outplay the best players in the world. That's Embiid. Love Brunson. Brunson doesn't have that potential. It's the second option who I believe can give you an efficient 28 a night from the perimeter. It's the third option who has the perfect skill set. Like, those sort of weapons give you a hell of a ceiling. The thing is, these teams are very close. I think that Philly does have that higher ceiling, but I do think New York has the higher floor, because who do I trust more to be healthy? Who just has more quality players who I know will do their job, right? Who has the right identity as a basketball team that they've proven time and again? All of those things go in favor of the Knicks. I can talk about how intriguing this Philly team is, because boy, are they talented at the top of this roster. It's just hard to fully trust them. And you can just see the world where it's like, all right, well, Embiid is 70%. He plays in the playoffs. His playmaking is not good enough. He doesn't have his lift. He can't rely on his face-up jumper. That fails him. And, like, that's it. That's it for the team right there. They don't have a Dante DiVincenzo who can come in and save the day. They don't have a Josh Hart who can come in and save the day, much less an OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges. And that's where I think that I slightly prefer New York. But it's really, really close, man. It's really close, because Philly can be a problem. If everything goes right, they are a problem. But again, it's hard to completely trust that that is the version that we're going to see.
I mean, I don't trust Philadelphia whatsoever. I don't trust Joel Embiid whatsoever. I don't know if I trust PG at this point in his career.
As a third option?
I mean, like, I trust him to an extent. I also know that PG could poop his pants like he's prone to do in the playoffs. I mean...
I think that's so overstated, dude.
Those aren't my biggest issues with Philadelphia, though. My biggest issues are I wonder about their size concerns against these other big physical teams in the East, how they physically match up with New York at full strength, how they physically match up with Boston at full strength. And then it is that shooting around them. I trust Maxey and PG to hit shots.
You worry about how they physically match up with Boston? I think that they go
Boston and New York.
Position.
And then my last concern is
why? Where is the glaring mismatch? I mean, Philly's got athletic wings. They've got length. Yeah, they have a massive center.
Tatum's stronger. Jaylen Brown is stronger. KP is huge.
But not by a greater margin than like other teams in the East. Like Philly's size is good
Boston and New York are better rebounding teams. They're definitely that's where I worry about them. And then shooting. I worry if Kelly Oubre and Caleb Martin. I get that they can get hot and have their moments. I worry about their shooting ceiling, and then they just don't have guys that you can turn to on the bench that fix those holes, right? That, where if you were struggling, that you could put somebody like that in. If the Knicks are struggling to shoot, they put in, Dante DiVincenzo. If they need the Energizer Bunny, they put in Josh Hart. So it's all those components. I look at the Sixers like the Dallas Cowboys, man. You've burnt me so many times. I need to see it before I buy in, and I just haven't seen it.
Yeah, I get it. And that's why I slightly prefer the Knicks as well. And I want to be clear, I think the Knicks do have the ceiling to knock out some heavyweights, but it's just going to be more of a grind. Like, Philly just has the raw ability with their stars to outclass these teams in a way that is really, really impressive. But I'm with you. If Embiid had a track record of being the same player, it would be different. And as I said, I like what they've done with the depth, but it's just not comparable to what New York has. There's still just question marks with the dudes around the big three. So do I think this is a better season for Philly? Yes. But could I see them losing in the second round? Again, absolutely. I think that is very, very, very possible. And also the East is just better, right? I mean, only one of New York or Philly can't even go to the conference finals if we're presuming that Boston is going to be the other team there.